All right. Well, thanks for joining on this Thursday evening. And I just want to let you know that for today, I'm just going to kind of run through some things, and there's going to be a feedback form that's in the chat box. I would love it if you could just fill that out for us and provide me with any feedback. Also, if you can ask any questions or anything that you're curious about in the chat box, and I can make sure to answer that or connect with it. And also, this is going to be uploaded to YouTube, so just for you to have your privacy. And so using the chat box is probably the best route. So great. Let me see. Is that already awesome? Yay. Thanks, Marcus. You already did it. All right. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Okay. So today's topic, as all of y'all have signed up so far, is the help your children better understand their emotions. It's a big subject, and sometimes it's kind of hard to just dissect it a little bit. So let's just kind of go right in. So an overview of today is this. Sorry, an overview of like today is just going to be these four kind of categories. It's just like a big, like in a way, like back of the book kind of summary. And it's strategies to help parents gain more control of their interactions with their children, learn coping strategies and techniques to help your children have better emotional regulation, learn the cues to help with self-control, awareness, and mindfulness, and formulate tools to use during meltdown moments. So kind of a lot going on in there, a bit broad, but a lot of it is more of just trying to, okay, what kind of cues are they giving us? What tools do I have? Helping them to know what to do in those moments, to understand their emotions, and just for you to feel like you have some control and you understand a little better about what's going on in those heightened emotional levels and dysregulation. This is kind of like the chapters in a book. So the main topics of what to expect, we're going to dive deeper into each of these categories, is to learning in the moment expectations. What is the sensory system and how do we understand it? How to regulate dysregulation, learning your child's cues, understanding what is in our control. And our control is kind of for parents, but also for children. How to help your child identify their emotions and learn the needs of your child. And we will definitely dive into each of these a little further. All right, here, let me move my screen. I don't know if, I'm sure y'all are able to do the same. I'm sure y'all can see it. So, here we go. In the moment expectations. I love to use the pyramid of needs, because if you go down right to the bottom and we look at food, water, and rest. If you're hungry, thirsty, or tired, it is pretty hard to try to have any form of a conversation, let alone like redirection, or even trying to help reason, right? Or help your child understand. So I like to kind of focus on that part first and foremost. So some great questions to ask, like when seeing your child just having a meltdown kind of a moment, whatever that meltdown looks like, right? A tantrum, arguing, just resistance, or fighting back, anything, is to just try to see, all right, Are they hungry, thirsty, tired? Like, is there a way that we can like tune into that? Does your child feel safe, like physically and emotionally? Sometimes in a school setting, particularly coming back from school, that those two can be quite difficult, particularly whenever it comes to peer interactions or, even bullying situations. So just feeling like not safe in that certain environment and making sure we can help to create that safe environment. Um, how does your child want you to show them that you are here for them? So we'll kind of get into that a little bit more too with the sensory system, but it's, do they want to have time spent, like just to kind of sit and just be in the moment? Are they more affectionate, like physical touch, like just really a big hug or something like that might go a long way. It's just kind of figuring those things out. And as sorry about that, as a parent, knowing your child best, like you know how your child likes to receive affection, receive love, in that kind of way. What are your child's strengths, like focusing on those strengths? So these are just kind of some questions that can kind of be in our minds as parents, and in a parent's mind of, okay, like can I fulfill these today, right? Can I help them to register, not only hungry, thirsty, and tired, but to provide them that safe space and to show them like how you see them as an individual. I love the pyramids of needs. It's a good go-to. Okay, so the sensory system. I'm primarily going to focus, well, for this one, this is the pyramid of learning. So at the very, very top, you're going to see academic learning. And this pyramid is so important, particularly at the bottom, the sensory system. So if there's learning that sensory system, and on this side, I explain more about which each of them mean, because sometimes it can be like the vestibular system is like how the body is like moving, right? So like I like to like think about like cartwheels or swinging. The tactile system is so touch, right? So it's not necessarily the deep squeezes like a big old hug. That's going to be more of the proprioception, like the joint compressions. Tactiles, that is more of like how does the clothes lay on the body, the tags on the back of the shirt, sweaters, different things like that. If holding a hand, is it nice and soft, or is it kind of like, does it need a little bit more of a bit of a grip? And so then we're going to go smell, visually, auditorily, and taste. So this is for sure, this is definitely more of like occupational therapy. However, I like to use this as a therapist in order to understand my clients a little bit more of how they're taking in information from their world. How do they enter into a room, particularly visually and auditorily? Those systems are almost always turned on, and getting almost hypersensitive and in those systems then causes a bit of dysregulation or getting just really overwhelmed. Lighting is a big one too. So soft lights that can really help to kind of calm the systems down. So we're going to continue just a little bit more with the sensory system, just to dive in more on how, as a parent, you can maybe understand the purpose of the sensory system a bit more, but how it is unique for your child or your children, and how that plays a very big role in emotional regulation. And so the purpose of the sensory system is to recognize, respond to, and interact with the world around us. So by understanding how our body is different and unique, and when certain environments might be overwhelming, that can be very empowering, not just for your child to start learning this, but for you. So then it's okay, knowing um, maybe different environments where there's like a lot of people going to a basketball game, a football game, um, a dance recital, or even sometimes I hear about like going into different kind of church environments. Just all of those people and all of that noise and the noise coming in all of these different directions can be really overwhelming, and then not knowing why it's overwhelming. So that's kind of where we get into it of why is this overwhelming, and how the noises or the visual stimuli can just be, in a way, hypersensitive in that moment, and to trigger this almost over response, fight, flight, or freeze kind of moment. Understanding how to balance our own sensory systems is important for learning. So I'm actually going to go back for one quick second, because this right here, when you go up to the top of the pyramid, that's where you have academic learning. So if your sensory system is, if you're having dysregulation in that category, taking in information is going to be incredibly challenging and very, very hard. And as you can see underneath it, then you have behavior as well, and just awareness in general. So that's why focusing on that can be so important and key to trying to see what kind of cues we can catch from our kids, in order to see like, okay, like this environment is just really hard for them. I wonder why. Let's connect the dots on every time a form of dysregulation has happened and an emotional outburst has happened. And maybe we can like find that kind of foundational piece that we can start working with to help them to better understand their own bodies, which then they're having this emotional response to. So let's see. I really like this graph over on this side too. It goes into kind of a little bit more of these examples of a sensory seeker. So really this individual, this person who is more of like a sensory seeker kind of person, they're going to like really like that kind of deep input, right? So the graph gives this great example for each one of them of the child enjoys and seeks out loud music with other intense sensory experiences. So rocking, the jumping, and struggling to know how intense their body is compared to other people. We have the avoider notices sensory input, but an active response is more of like avoidance. And so you can see there, it's going to have the low neurological threshold, which means like, I can't really handle so much of this input right now. And so then you see that avoidance. The sensor notices sensory input, passive response. So child seems distracted when loud music or the TV is on. Register misses sensory input and passive response. The example is child doesn't show any response when name is called. And so some of these can just be really helpful to try to see how it is explained in a broader term, and maybe how in different environments you might see your child like really identify as one of these. So helping to understand why there might be emotional dysregulation or avoidant tendencies, and how those emotional outbursts or emotional dysregulation, and just dysregulation in general, their behavior kind of comes out. Regulating dysregulation. Um, I really like Dr. Bruce Perry, his 3 R's, just being able to kind of simplify how to go about helping someone who is dysregulated to then become regulated. And so the 3 R's stand for regulate, relate, and reason. So I like at the bottom of the pyramid how it goes from the bottom to up, right? And so help your child regulate their body. During dysregulation, the body is in a fight, flight, or freeze mode. So with each one of these, and please, if some of these terms, please put it in the chat box as well, if maybe you would like a little bit more of an explanation of what some of these terms might mean. But the fight is exactly what it means. Like that's going to be just that you're going to see that more some form of aggressive tendencies, right? Flight, you're going to see that daughter, that person, that individual, that child that just kind of gets like flooded and then boom, runs away. And then freeze, it's, boom, not saying anything, just kind of deer in the headlights kind of style. The second one, relate, connect through understanding and empathy. So I'll work into this in just a minute, but then reason is reflect and problem solve for future events. Sometimes what gets really challenging is number 2, because like parents really want to, we have all of this information already from the experiences that we have had while in this world. And so we want to go straight to helping our kids by just reasoning with them. And that's going to be a struggle. That's going to be a challenge because first it's helping them to regulate, but it's also then boom, like let's connect to that dysregulation, like by validation and empathy and helping them to understand that we get it. So that kind of comes more into, it's like, man, like you are just really frustrated and angry. And it seemed like you might have felt embarrassed. Like, I get that. I feel that too. And I'm sorry that you just experienced that. And then kind of going back to in the moment, knowing what your kid needs to feel that you're there with them, that almost the affection that you have towards them. Is it with words in that moment, looking at them on their same level? Is it with a big hug, just sitting next to them while they're experiencing that moment, just having a moment of just being there? And that's what that relate part, is talking about. And then the reason is going to come after. So once they're kind of in a regulated state and you really met them where they need to be met emotionally, because the dysregulation is, it can be very challenging to then process once you kind of get into a regulated state and all those negative emotions that come with the dysregulation and processing that. So being able to just be in that moment and relate to those just hard and negative emotions that just happened, before you kind of get to the reasoning part, right? Getting to the, all right, like you were really frustrated or embarrassed. That are those emotions that are going to happen? Absolutely. It's going to happen all the time. How can we then go about expressing those emotions that can have a different outcome, right? We don't have to run away, in the grocery store or go and push someone or push me. We can kind of maybe go about it in this way. Tell me that I'm feeling frustrated. Let's take a deep breath. Ask mom for a hug, or just say I'm feeling frustrated, or hey, I'm going to need a moment. Can I have some privacy? there's a number of ways that we can kind of work through it. And we have to tweak it for that, what makes sense for each kid. But this is kind of the sequence of events to be mindful about. Oh, the fawn response. Yes, yes. I do. Thank you for that question. So almost kind of like the, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a bit of a blank, but I'm glad that you brought that up. The fight, flight, freeze, and then the fawn, right? And let me see. During dysregulation, that definitely can happen, and it's definitely not these three all of the time. It's something that's just so often used. And I'm so sorry, I'm kind of drawing a blank on a good example. But the biggest go-to for me is more of a almost like, help me, like, coddle me and save me kind of style. And absolutely, that can be a form of the child seeking you out for co-regulation. I don't know if that was exactly what you were asking, but please let me know and I can elaborate a little bit more too. Learning your child's cues. Our body gives us cues when we are dysregulated. And I just kind of put down a few over here. This is more for younger and developmentally younger individuals. But during like teens, preteens, it can kind of look a bit different. However, some of these can be kind of cues that we just say, whoa, wait a second, like, let's try to like have some water, eat something, or maybe just have a little bit of quiet, cueing into maybe what their sensory system might need in the moment. The uncontrollable laughter is different than like the, like all of a sudden like burst and everything of laughter. It's just like, if you go and, for example, like say tickle your kid, or they just heard a joke and it's just this almost like laughter that like can't, it's like, whoa, that was a big response almost. Fast or hard movements, and that's kind of almost in a more uncontrollable way. A loud voice, unable to follow instructions, impulsive vocalizations, unprompted outburst, impulsive behavior, speaking very, very fast, uncontrollable crying, excessive like salivating, dilated pupils, and like the shrieking or the high pitched kind of yelling. And it sounds, whenever it's written down, it's like, well, yeah, that kind of sounds like, whoa, what's going on? And sometimes in the moment, that's when it's kind of hard to cue into that. And to help them to kind of cue into their bodily response to feeling, that kind of the dysregulation. And I wrote down over here, so some things parents can do when they see these certain cues, before it kind of goes into the far-reached dysregulation. So we can kind of start with the really having this soft, very calm, no affect kind of presence, right? So kind of portraying this very strong but very soft kind of presence, right? So getting down on the child's level and talk to your child in a calm and kind of soft voice. And helping them to kind of stay in tune to that. And typically, when you are able to kind of get down on their level and truly like have a moment of like looking at them, sometimes you'll see it like in their eyes of like, whoa, like you're really having a hard time like looking at me right now. That is a big cue and a sign of dysregulation and trying to find a way to have that like almost like meaningful connection and eye contact with them. Um, Offer food, water, and like physical support, a blanket, a hug, hand squeezes, things like that. For older, for yeah, like preteens, depending on their affection levels, helping them in kind of like a different way of, maybe you want some privacy, or being able to kind of like have some downtime, even if it's like sitting next to you. But the blanket is always is a wonderful tool to use for like any age to kind of give that big kind of almost an input, a squeeze to where the child or the person in that moment can like cue into like their body and what they're like where their body is and what is it doing. Cold water. Cold water is huge when it comes to that form of regulation. Splashing some cold water on your face, not always feasible though. So, like, definitely understand that. But you can do it in different ways. Drinking some cold water or going and washing your hands, going and just washing your hands real quick can be quite helpful. Changing the rooms and location with softer light. Do something calming like reading a puzzle, going outside. Right now, so right now in Texas, it's just like so hot. And I know that that's really challenging. Like, oh man, like let's just go outside for a minute. So I get that, but it's even for like 5 minutes, being able to remove yourself from where this dysregulation is almost happening and getting some form of just open air, and removing yourself from where that location happens. So what I like to use this as an example, which is it could be your favorite room in the entire house. It could be the kid's favorite room in the entire house. However, if dysregulation happens in that room is almost like a visual reminder and a visual cue of that feeling, that emotional dysregulation. And so by being able to remove yourself from that room, then it can almost be like a reset. So like, all right, let's reset. Get back to kind of like a good playing field, right? And then we can kind of go back in. But just that transition, right? The transition from standing up or getting up and moving your body, which means you have to cue into everything going on, and actually move your body into another room, do an activity, wash your hands, drink some water, have a snack, take a quick bike ride. Even if it's like doing mom a favor, can you go check the mail for me? Kind of really need your help right now. Giving that kind of a job, and then coming back and being able to kind of reset, come back in. Love this. Focus on what you can control. This is so important, I feel like, for parents too, and really all of this. Because if parents, if we're dysregulated, or having a hard time or struggling, it's then really, really hard to then, in a way, make those choices that that are more beneficial. And so focusing on what we can control. And so my response to others' behavior, how are we choosing to act around someone else who maybe has upset us? Boundaries I set with others, how I let other people affect me when, if I forgive others. And that kind of goes into that almost negative spiral of if somebody or something has happened, say, for example, at school, and getting on the school bus and a kid was just maybe goofing off and put his foot out and tripped me. Um, Instead of letting that ruin almost the rest of the evening or kind of fester into these negative, almost like that negative self-talk, just having that, all right, like, how am I going to move past this? How am I going to move past this moment? That's in my control. Of course, after validating those emotions, because they're very real, um, where I can give my time, energy, and attention. Um, so, being in the moment, understanding that these negative emotions are so real, but also, all right, like, we've talked through this a bit. Um, are we going to spend like more time on this? Like, if that's a yes, okay, we can spend more time on it, but how about we just come back to it, right? So that's a good way of using these kinds of tools when it comes to things I can control, and using in a way that phrase like, are we going to spend, more time and energy? It sounds like we're saying the same things right now, right? We're saying the same almost negative self-talk, or just that the negative talk that we have with ourselves and how we're processing something. um, and so definitely wanting to validate those feelings, so helping our kids to understand, like, as a very real feeling, and that's a real feeling too, this response, how can we move forward, and let's try to move forward for a little bit. And if it's still like on your mind, sure, let's come back to it. But as of right now, let's kind of almost like put a pin in it, and let's come back to it and distract ourselves and see if it's still important a little later. Um, and how I speak to and treat others. All of these are just wonderful, like, kind of almost like writing those down and being able to, use those and pick those out of our back pocket to help cue our kids into, all right, we're getting we're having a heightened level of emotions right now, and let's see what's in our control. um, and right here I have just label, focus on can and yes questions. So let's label what is in your control in that moment. This can be helpful for the child and the parent to do together. um, and even kind of stating like, gosh, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by how this person was acting, and I wonder what I can do right now. And having your kid kind of be a part of that talk and letting them see, like, we struggle, parents, adults struggle with these things too, and these are some tools that we're using. um Focus on can, so focus on what can be done instead of what cannot. um And so that will be like the inner circle instead of focusing on the outer circle. Um, and then yes questions. So try to ask questions where the answer is yes. This can help with self confidence, empowering your child and yourself to persevere through a really challenging moment. Um, and so, um, in a way, like, yes questions can be. Um, um, it's really hard to understand how somebody is thinking and feeling and why they acted a certain way. But can we think about how we feel? Yes. How are we feeling right now? And then kind of working through this, um, and working into what we can control. Right. Just see. Um, identifying emotions. Um, and it's identifying emotions can be very challenging, even for adults, like, especially like in that moment, trying to identify the feeling and the emotion that we're feeling can be quite challenging, particularly if it's just like, whoa, we're on the edge right now. And so um, what what this what this part is kind of about is how we can start, in a way, priming, right? How we can start practicing some things when we're not in such an emotional dysregulated state of learning to identify these emotions. Um, and so it is sometimes challenging to label our own emotions, okay? And um, that can, for example, some of it is just like um, or or feeling lonely, um, um, even anxious. And how it kind of comes out is mad or frustrated or angry. Um, and so, sorry, I'll go back to this one, but games can be used to help our children understand the range of emotions without experiencing the emotions in that moment. Um, And this provides opportunities to practice the emotion by using like forms of pretend play. So it doesn't have to necessarily be with like puppets or little action figures, which, that is great and a fun way to kind of play with those emotions without actually like feeling them like in that moment, like right now. Um, a good go-to game is expected and unexpected. I love to play this game with my child and preteens and even teen clients. So, expected and unexpected. So, what we end up doing is we end up, I'll kind of start first whenever I'm explaining this game, but you just come up with a scenario. And I like to just have something that's totally out there. So then we kind of started off having fun and just kind of getting a good laugh out of it. And so I'll say something along the lines of Michael and Johnny were riding their bikes. And Johnny got his new bike and he ran it through the mud. He got so mad, he picked up his bike and just threw it in the bayou. And sometimes it's just, I love the response that I get. It's just like, what? And they just start laughing. And then, we have like a good, like fun connection and it's just something like kind of easy and low key. But then we kind of come back to it and it's like, well, like, what was that? Like, was that expected or unexpected? It's like totally unexpected. Um, Man, I wonder how he was though feeling, right? And he got this new bike, but he just got it muddy and he just felt maybe frustrated and mad. And like I wanted to keep this bike kind of clean, right? And so then we can kind of dive into that emotion of like, all right, he felt like he just got his dirty bike cleaned and he was feeling mad and frustrated, maybe a little frustrated with himself. Well, when was the time that you got frustrated with yourself? How did you handle it? Let's talk about that. And it's just kind of a good conversation starter of being able to have that back and forth. And by not having and experiencing that emotion right then and it not being so fresh. So sometimes these emotions can be just so fresh in us. And that's when it's hard to then sometimes like process it. And I like to use the example of if you go outside and go for this really long run, you're going to come back. And although your body has stopped moving, your heart's still racing a lot, right? And so that's the same thing when we have these heightened emotions. We still have this physiological response from that emotional dysregulation, which then can still be hard to process that really big emotion that just happened. Another one that I do is, how would you feel if, and then kind of go into something. And it can kind of stem from the expected, unexpected, right? How would you feel if you just got this brand new bike and you ran through the mud? Like, man, I probably wouldn't feel anything, or, oh, I would get a little frustrated with myself. So that's how I would utilize that one. And also like just talking about different emotions when you see them, like in the store, at dinner, at the park, or from a movie, a clip, a show. I know even like YouTube clips and things like that. And just by being able to process emotions that we're seeing in real time. Um, and, of course, as they kind of come and go. What needs do they need met? And so when somebody is in a regulated state, then their needs are being met. Needs are not being met during dysregulation. There is typically like miscommunication or disconnection. And that's how I feel like that's how like that dysregulation, like that's where it kind of stems from and comes from. And then having that, just that negative emotional response that kind of comes with it, um, which is then very hard to process the actions and behaviors and other things that come with that emotional dysregulation and those negative emotions. Um, it often takes trial and error to figure out what need is required to have more stability. Um, but you can get there just by continuing to try new ways. Try something new if what you are doing is not working. These last two can be quite exhausting, and I completely understand that. Like when you're in the thick of it and um, it's just so challenging, then that it's really hard to just keep trying new things. And I think that's when it kind of comes back to a reset and really focusing on you as a parent and maybe what you need in that moment. And learning that, it's okay to just be struggling or to be having a really hard time right now. Um, and like what is it that I need in order to feel like more in control of myself, and so then I can kind of go and maybe brainstorm and try to figure these things out too. um, Oftentimes what I hear is a lot of is like this power struggle, and that really does come when there's just dysregulation and things are just kind of weighing and getting really heavy, or it's the end of a long day. And it's like, no, this is our routine. You need to go up and just brush your teeth right now and then go to bed. Um, However, like the child has also probably had a really long day too, and just wanting some form of control. And so that's where we can kind of have those moments of like, oh man, like the volcano is just erupting. And so this could be a way of just kind of taking a step back and just being like, you know what, I'm just going to need to reset, and I need to kind of figure some things out too. Oh, all right. We have 15 more minutes. And Do we have any more questions? Or, of course, put it in the chat box. Or if you need me, you'd like for me to kind of go back on some slides, and in order to kind of maybe talk about those a bit more, happy to do it. I do have a couple more things to kind of talk about. So if you can stay on until the end, but just to see if anybody has a question or two, I'll wait like another minute or so. Okay, let me see. So what is meant by this again? What needs do they need met? Okay, let's go back to that real quick. Hmm. you mind giving a little bit more information about that? When you put in quotes like this again.
What? Sorry,
Yeah.
morning. I mean, it's morning here in Malaysia. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, I didn't get the header actually. What needs do they need met?
Mhm.
Yeah, but I understood what you were trying to say, but I just couldn't connect them, I think. So I
Okay.
thought I must have missed something.
Okay. So this is like, in a way, needing something. So it all of these slides really kind of like interconnect with each other. And so some of this is definitely like what need is kind of like needs to be met. So like let's just like look at the individual one when I was talking about like the power. So sometimes like in those like emotional dysregulated states, or particularly during that dysregulation, how it's like there's misconnection or disconnection. And so what that can end up doing is, what do they need in order to feel that connection or communication? So do they need to have choices? So when it comes to that power struggle, um, um, like not wanting to do their homework, right? Or struggling to eat some, healthy food, or maybe struggling to get into the car at a certain time. Sometimes it's like it's about power. And so with children, particularly with like kids like getting into school all day long, they're kind of, and I'm using this as an example for like, they probably just need some like a choice, some power, where they're being told what to do all day long. And so whenever they come home, what I hear a lot is they get home, I hear nothing but great reports at school. And then they get home and there's just like all this dysregulation and just this outburst. And I feel like a punching bag. That's what I hear from parents. And it's like, yeah, they're unloading on you. And they're unloading on you because like their vase is full. They've just, all those little things that you just kind of have to deal with every, like all during the day, it's just unloading. It's just their vase is full. They can't handle anything more. They can't handle somebody telling them another thing that they have to do and not having a choice. And so I like to use that as like, they need some kind of control. They need some kind of power. So by being able to provide them with some form of choices, like, listen, I've already made dinner, but what would you like for dinner? What do you want to do with your evening? How can I help you like right now? And that can be an example of like needing some form of control, needing that power, needing to be like almost like in control of themselves. So good question. Thank you. I hope I answered it.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much for addressing that.
Absolutely. Do you have any more questions about this, or
And no, that's good.
stuff?
That's pretty good with that example as well.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. All right. Okay. Any more questions? I only have a couple more things to kind of like run through. So I have like about a minute or so that we can kind of ask some questions, or even kind of go back to some slides. Hmm. Right. Okay, so just a little bit about me. My name is Jessie Blakely. And I am so sorry. I don't think that I even introduced myself when I started this. But yes, that's me. So I am Jessie Blakely. I just a little bit about me. Like, so I had 10 years as a speech therapist, and collaborating with other specialists to serve the neurodiversity population and their families. And And if some of you are, familiar with other forms of therapy, you probably got a lot of like a bit of the OT and that coordination. And so that is a definitely a huge part of my practice, which is just really trying to understand my clients, how they're taking in this world and kind of what their body is telling them about how they're feeling, because I feel like those things are all just so interconnected. And so I did work during my my internship as a dean of students and family support. And this is for the young adults ranging from 18 to 25. Absolutely wonderful experience. And throughout my journey, I've acquired skills and specialties in regulation behavior and communication strategies. I like to work with teens, children, teens, young adults, parents, and just kind of trying to kind of navigate how we're going to work through these like chapters that are just a bit more challenging, gives us those struggles and those life stressors. I use a range of techniques to better serve my clients' unique situations while focusing on like the holistic approach. And part of that is just like, where are you right now in this moment, right? So sometimes we need to just like process everything that's going on. And other times we can use it as like, all right, let's like kind of move forward and talk about some strategies maybe we can use later on. Both are huge, so important. I am dedicated to providing an innovative and therapeutic experience to all of my clients. And yes, I love this one, where this is a journey that I am passionate about by empowering my clients to explore their strengths and potential for growth. So again, if you can use in the link, there's a feedback form. And if you can provide me with your feedback, I would greatly appreciate it. I also offer free 15-minute consultations. So please let me know in the form, provide your email if you would like one of those. And so we can kind of dive deeper into maybe, your particular situation. And I'm also starting to kind of work in a virtual parents group where it would be like 8 to 10 sessions, and where we would just kind of dive into all of these a bit more and talk more about particular strategies and techniques, and even like your own personal situation with like, giving examples and being able to like, what kind of cues does this possibly mean? And we'll just kind of brainstorm with each other. So thanks, Marcus. Yes, if you can use those links, that would be wonderful. So, yes. Oh, here we go. There it is. So for more information, just please call us. And again, we can schedule a free consultation. And I would be very happy to meet with you one-on-one. All right, bye. Thank you so much. Great. Well, I hope to hear from some of you, and yes, please email me if you need anything. All right. Thank you. Bye.